This is Melanie with Semper Adventure. I'm back with probably the most boring video you will watch, but probably the most needed video as well. During this process to go overseas, one of the biggest hassles we had was the overseas screening. There was not a lot of information about who does what, where it needs to be done, or even what forms need to be done. So I ended up on the phone with probably about 60 different people, literally 60 different people during this process to try to navigate what needed to be done and when it needed to be done, in what order. So it was quite the process. One of the times I've spoke with someone in Pendleton, because that's our closest Marine base to us, and they literally told me that I needed to go to Point Lomas, which is also in California, to have these forms filled out, endorsed, and sent up. Clearly that's not an option because we live in Denver, Colorado. I think the biggest part that was the issue in our process was the fact that we are attached to an Air Force base instead of a Marine base or a Navy base, and we don't have any Marine services here, as well as no Navy MTF. There's no Navy docks here. So the process is different with each base, with each branch, and it's not really clearly written down. I sat on Google, I talked to my military spouse friends, and there was just no clear-cut process. So I wanted to bring you the information that I learned along the way and share it with you, because I know I have spoken with other military spouses, and this has been a very big hassle for many spouses or many military families. My husband is active duty Marines. We are assigned to an Air Force base, and we are actually administratively attached to New Orleans down at Mar Forez, where a lot of people are not getting to, or PCSing overseas, moving overseas. It's for the process, typically with Mar Forez, people are getting augmented, or they are deploying, and it's typically reservists. And so that's what their IPAC deals with the most. So it was not an easy process for us, and it seemed like no matter who we talked to, there was a different answer, or no answer, or call someone else. And as the process went on, I just grew more and more frustrated. So hopefully sharing all these forms with you and who to send them to, who needs to fill them out, will actually be very beneficial to you, because like I said, even if you look at what's on MOL in the travel tab and the overseas screening, it doesn't tell you where to send them. So great, you get all the forms filled out, but now what? Who do you talk to? Who do you contact? Where does this packet go to? So again, not super exciting, but very necessary. So hopefully we can get you heading in the right direction if you're not really sure about what the process looks like. I know if you're like me, if you're a military spouse sitting here watching this, I typically handle all the family stuff, and my husband handles, he handles the green side. He does all the stuff that he needs to do. But I'm not good with sitting back and waiting for answers. I need the answers, and I need them now. I want to know what the process looks like and how to stay organized and make sure that everything that we need to do gets done well before it needs to be done, because the overseas screening process can take weeks or months, depending on what type of medical conditions your family might have. Even if you have none, COVID has backed up so many things. There's so many people working from home. So just knowing what the process is and writing it down and knowing what comes next is very helpful for me. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce all of the different forms and who fills them out. So if you see me looking back and forth to the computer, it's only because I want to make sure I get you the right form numbers, the right names, so that you can Google them. If you cannot locate them, at least then you have a starting point of what needs to be done. The first order of affairs is going to be that your Marine needs to sign into MOL, and there's a travel tab there, This travel tab includes a copy of your web orders, the outbound interview, and a section called overseas screening. Now, this seems very basic, but if you've never been overseas before, you're not really sure where to start, that's where you start. In that, the very first thing is the Department of Navy OCONUS suitability process. It's literally a slide from PowerPoint, and it kind of gives you a flow sheet on what needs to be done and who needs to do it. Now, everything is not on there. There are some things missing. After all of my frustration, I ended up reaching out to Okinawa MT, the Navy MTF over there, the Naval Hospital. There is an overseas screening department at every MTF. If you are not assigned to a local MTF through the Navy, you are not going to get help like you need. When I contacted ours here at the Air Force Base, they told me, sorry, we're not Navy, we can't help you. So with that being said, it must be a Navy MTF. It can be a clinic. It does not have to be a full-size hospital. A lot of these clinics on these bases do have overseas screening, and actually Buckley Air Force Base has an overseas screening office too, but they could not help us since we are not Air Force. We had to go through the Navy. It must be Navy. So this color-coded flow sheet will help determine what's next in the process, because some things need to be done first and some things need to be done later. So start with that, print that out, cross off your boxes as you do them if you want to stay organized. I do have a binder. It has all of our overseas screening forms in it, all of our medical records, anything that we might need for our move, it's all in there. Of course, all of our moving information, our coordinators and things like that, that's all in there. But print that form off as your first thing to be done. Next up is going to be your report of medical history, which is the DD 2087. This is filled out by the service member or the spouse for each family member. There is one per family member, as well as one for the service member. This needs to be filled out regardless of any medical history you might have. If you have zero medical history, it still needs to be filled out. This does need to be signed by a provider. It does not need to be a military provider. It can be a civilian provider. Whomever your PCM is, that's who's going to sign this for you. Basically, it's just outlining any medical history that you're declaring yourself that you might have, from headaches to any type of sleep apnea or asthma, anything that you might need to see a doctor for in the 3 years that you are going to be overseas. You're going to fill that out, and it's just, a lot of yes, no, see below in the notes type thing. And then your provider signs it, and they also write notes about your medical history. That way you have your own words, and then the doctor has their words, so that you have two different versions or two different accounts of the types of medical conditions you might have. So that is your first part of this process, is to get those forms filled out. At the same time you're getting those filled out, you've already filled your portion out, you're taking it to the doctor. Some doctors require that you have a visit. Some will say, oh, well, you've had a physical pretty recently, we'll just fill the forms out. But that's totally up to whomever you see for your medical care. The other form that's going to go with this to the same doctor is the Navy Med 1300, NAVMED 1300. There is a part 1 and a part 2 to this. Part 1 gets filled out by your provider as well. They fill it out. I filled out all the information on the top just so they could check yes, no, sign the bottom, be done. But they are filling out the 1300. And part 2 is filled out by a dentist. Now, typically in this overseas screening, you have the option for whether or not a civilian or a Navy doctor can fill this out. But I was told by many different people along the way that the dental part must be filled out by a military dentist. Fortunately, my dentist is also a reservist, so I could get him to do it. When I contacted the Air Force Base, the dental clinic, they only see active duty. They do not see dependents. It was quite a bit of a process. First they made us appointments, and then the day before, and the appointments were pushed out. Then the day before they said, oh, I'm sorry, we don't see dependents. And so I was like, okay, well, this has to be filled out by a medical provider or a military provider. And so they were like, let me call you back. And so they did. And they said that as long as we brought the records in with our forms, that they would fill out these forms for us. So they never did see us, but they did fill out the forms. The reason I was told that it has to be a military dentist is because a lot of civilian dentists don't understand the types of care that we can get on the island. And so they were signing off that everyone was a level 1, even though there's different levels to what kind of care you need. So obviously, if you need some dental work done, you're going to need to get that done before you go. If you are not a level 1 or level 2, your chances of getting approved for Okinawa are next to none. So you need to get all your dental work done before you go. Moving to Okinawa is not where you should wait to get your dental work done just because you're going, and it will be free. You got to get it done beforehand, and that's why they are requiring that military dentists fill out these forms, because they do understand what the limits are on island for what type of care we can get. There's not as many specialists, there's not as many dental appointments or dentists. You are limited in what type of medical care you can get, and that's what the whole point of this medical overseas screening is so that your medical conditions or your dental needs are going to be met on the island. If they cannot be met, then you will get new orders. They just don't have the abilities that we would have in the States or at other large MTFs. They just don't have the specialties. So that's what the whole point of this process is so that we can make sure that we are cared for as dependents once we get on island. Next up is the DD 2792 EFMP. That's the Exceptional Family Member Program. There is some different information on whether or not this is needed for everyone or just people who have medical conditions. There is a checkbox that says that it is for overseas moves, to make sure that you are able to go. So we did go ahead and have that filled out. Even though most of us didn't qualify for it, we had one filled out for everyone. It is a long packet. Your doctor, your PCM, again, has to fill that out. So you probably want to get that done with the other medical forms, just drop them off all at the same time. In order to keep myself organized, I went ahead and wrote a Post-it note for each person, and it had all of the different medical forms or school forms. It said, it said Leah, and then it said medical form, and then it had the Navy Med 1300 as well as the DD 2087. I had that written on there. Dentist, the part 2 is the 1300 part 2. I had DD 2792 special education school form, and then the EFMP. So as I got these filled out and done, I crossed them off as we went. The EFMP form is very long, very extensive. I'm sure doctors don't like filling this out, but you don't want to get to the end and find out that you needed to do it and that suddenly you're not going to be approved because you didn't do it. I will say that our overseas screening did come back before our EFMP stuff came back. So the process for the EFMP is that you have that medical stuff filled out and then you take it to the nearest EFMP office. For us, I couldn't find anyone to do it. Again, the Air Force said that they wouldn't take it on, even though, it's Department of the DOD, So I called up Pendleton EFMP, and they agreed that they would take it. So it was emailed through my husband's work email address, which is a secure email address. And it took 9 weeks to get this done. 9 weeks. They said it would take 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not sure what really happened, but all the paperwork was done, and it took us a long time. And then it from the EFMP office, it goes up to Headquarters Marine Corps, and then Headquarters Marine Corps decides if anyone does qualify for EFMP. If they do qualify, then you'll get a letter back. If you're lucky like us, you'll get someone else's letter and email instead of our own. And then you're going to start getting emails from your coordinator. So you get a new coordinator at each duty station. EFMP is not, it will not stop you from going somewhere. You should do it if there's any medical conditions that require specialists. I go back to CPAPs. I actually have sleep apnea from the altitude here in Denver. It is one of the causes of sleep apnea, so I am an EFMP member due to sleep apnea. Hopefully after we move from here and go to sea level in Okinawa, hopefully the use for the CPAP discontinues and I can come off EFMP. You can always ask to have it reheard if your conditions change. But you don't want to get to the end of this and find out that you can't go with your service member when he goes to Okinawa because you didn't get something done that they said needed to be done. So there is a box to check for that. Even if there's no medical conditions, it says that you are trying to find out about overseas suitability. So go ahead and get that done. It's part of the process. And you might just have to find your nearest Marine Corps base to be able to send this to. So definitely get the EFMP thing done too. Next up is the DD2792. It's the Special Education Early Intervention Summary. This is to be filled out for any children between the ages of 3 and 21. That can be, the reason they go up to adults is because sometimes there's different learning disabilities that may be necessary in a public school setting. This must be filled out by the school. This is actually not in the MOL portal or on the list of things that need to be done, but I was told by Okinawa that this does need to be done. Another one of those fancy little things I found along the way that you will want to get done. It's just a short form stating if there's any type of learning issues that might need to be considered, whether it's an IEP or something like that. So the school does fill that out. The only people who do not need to do that is homeschoolers. So if you're a homeschooler, this doesn't apply to you, but I think the form does need to get filled out saying that you are a homeschooler. So definitely check into that. Again, that's the DD2792, the Special Education Early Intervention Summary. It's very quick. Schools did it. Make sure while you're at it, you're filling out those release forms to get the school records. For us here, currently what they had us do is fill out these forms, and then a few days after the last day of school, they will send them to us via email. That's our new COVID policy. We will not hand carry these. Hopefully this doesn't become a problem, so just figure out what your school's process is for getting those records as you're leaving, whether it's in the middle of the school year or at the end. What's the process? How do you obtain those standardized test results, that sort of thing. Just hand it all in at the same time, and they sent it home with my kids. So that one was an easy one to get filled out, but it is necessary. The next one is probably the most important one for us in this whole process. So as I said before, I called over 60 people and I got 60 different answers, and I really wasn't sure what to do. I didn't know who to send this packet to once we got it done. Like, great, we got it done. It took forever, and now what? So IPAC is kind of your primary person that you're going to contact, but if you don't live next to an MTF, they do not make this process easy. Like, what do we do? Who do we send this to? We ask IPAC. They're like, I don't know. We ask the local base, the overseas screening. They're like, sorry, we're not Navy. We don't know. We can't help you. So I called San Diego MTF because that is our closest. And so I called this overseas screening, and apparently the overseas screening office is actually Navy. And so they're like, oh, your packet's done. You just need to call this office. And so I call this office, wait a couple days for an answer because everybody's, working from home with COVID. And they say, oh, I'm sorry, we can only pass that on if you're Navy. And so we're I went circle, 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 and I just couldn't get anywhere. And I was getting so frustrated with the process. I thought it was never going to be done. So finally, I reached out to Okinawa MTF, and someone really kindly emailed me back with a list of things that need to be done. And that's where I found out about the school form, as well as I got the form called the 13002 Bravo BU Medical Cognizance Responsibility Guide. So this paperwork is golden. It's just a one sheet of if you live in this state, this is your nearest MTF, and that's who you should send it to. So this one little piece of paper was what I was waiting for. This piece of paper tells us if we are not assigned to a base that has Navy services, Navy medical services, then this is what you do. It took me a while to get to that point. So our number one was San Diego, but it doesn't give you contact information. So that's the problem. So San Diego was our number one. I had already gone circles with San Diego. So Corpus Christi was our number two. There is no contact information on this piece of paper. So you do have to do a lot of homework. Basically, there's an email and it's like over screenings at, and then it has some information there. But you could probably call the MTF that you are assigned to the overseas screening department and see if you can get that email address to send these packets to. So we finally did get in touch with Corpus Christi because I asked the guy in Okinawa, I'm like, do you have any contact information here? Because I don't know what to do. I've already tried San Diego. I've probably talked to 10 different people in San Diego. I've talked to Pendleton. I've talked to San Diego. I've talked to Point Lomas. I've talked to everyone I can think of, and no one is giving me the information I need. So he did give me the email addresses. If you have to reach out to the Okinawa MTF, because no matter where you're coming from, you've got to go through the Okinawa MTF. So they will have that point of a contact for you if you need it. But that one piece of paper was golden, because with that, I knew what to do now. So that was the next part of it. So definitely you can Google 1300.2 Bravo, and you can find out where you need to send it to if you are not attached to a Marine Corps or Navy base. There's so many of us out there, whether it's I&I staff or you're, with a different unit, a joint billet or something like that, or if you are on recruiting duty, because, we're all out here we're like a fish out of the sea, especially, here in the middle of the country where there's zero services nearby us. Our closest is down in Fort Carson, but there's no Navy services down there either. So that one piece of paper is very important. Finally, the last piece of this is the 1300-16 Report of Suitability for Overseas Assignments. This form is filled out by the service member. There's 4 different parts of it. It's approved by the OIC at the MTF that you're sending it to. Again, that was Corpus Christi for us, but that could be anywhere. From there, they send it, from the MTF, they send it over to Okinawa with the forms all filled out, and then Okinawa decides to stamp it approved or denied. And then it comes back through that MTF that you sent it to, and then they send it back to you, stamped approved. We did this all through email because we couldn't go in person. So that was done that way. And then from there, you send it up to your commanding officer to endorse it that you are approved for overseas screening. One more point that is important with this part of your area clearance. This is not related to medical, but you do need to do the anti-terrorism. I've read 2 different things. Anyone over the age of 13, anyone over the age of 16 in the house, they all need to do this anti-terrorism and get the certificate for it as part of your area clearance. So that is an important part of this too. You need to figure out whether it's 13 or 16, we went ahead and did it with our 13-year-old. We all sat on a Saturday night, which was super exciting for that class, and we got it done. But it does need to get done to be able to get that area clearance. Without the area clearance, you can't get on the housing list and a whole host of other things. Some people are saying you can't get airline tickets without area clearance. This is a long, drawn-out process. It is not done overnight, and as much as I wanted to get things done, I had to wait for other people. So it was a testament of my patience, or maybe just a test of my patience. I'm not really sure. But I'm glad that we were able to get the medical screening done. We're still waiting on area clearance, but it is a process. I am going to write the names of these forms down in the description, as well as making sure that there is a flow chart for Okinawa. I will put a link for that and the various different parts of the process that you need to do. But the overseas screening is not limited to just Okinawa. The forms I've talked about are not just for Okinawa. They're for any overseas. That includes Alaska as well as Hawaii. So if you are in the Marine Corps, probably the Navy too. I'm sure they use the same sheets since we are the stepchildren of the Navy. This is the process. So some of the notes that I've said about the dentist needing to be military, that is Okinawa specific, but it could be for other locations as well. So just make sure you're going through and you're checking off these boxes as you're going down. Again, keeping yourself organized. Where are these forms? Crossing off what you've completed for each family member, just to stay organized. It's daunting, and I can't imagine not being organized through it and then finding out that you had a certain form that needed to be done, but you did not do it. So let me know if there's any questions about the process. You can leave me a comment and I can answer there. But I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that if you were struggling with the process, that this will actually, lay it out for you. And so long from Semper Adventure.